The grand court of the Zolari Empire was a place built to impress and intimidate. The walls stretched high, carved from shining crystal that reflected beams of colored light across the hall. Massive banners of alien silk waved gently from the vaulted ceiling, each carrying symbols of victories, power, and centuries of domination over lesser species. At the center of this palace, a throne of silver and obsidian rose above the chamber, where the imperial family presided with an aura of unquestionable authority. Hundreds of envoys, soldiers, and servants filled the chamber, their voices blending into a constant murmur as the day's ceremony began. Among the many delegations stood the humans, their uniforms simple compared to the jeweled robes of alien diplomats. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, barely a century beyond their first interstellar flight. Many in the galaxy still saw them as children stumbling into a world far beyond their strength. Yet they were here, requested to attend, to observe, and to prove that Earth had a place among the stars. Their group numbered fewer than a dozen, led by an ambassador, but one of them drew more attention than expected. It was not the gray-haired envoy or the uniformed captain. It was the youngest, an aide who walked silently behind them. Cadet Michael Reyes was only 19, barely out of training at the Human Academy. His task was simple: carry documents, take notes, assist where needed. He was tall, with dark hair and steady eyes, though nothing about him seemed unusual. To most, he was invisible, a boy placed among giants. Yet in the court of the Zolari, where power was measured in strength, wit, and arrogance, invisibility was itself an insult. The ceremony carried on with ritual greetings. Alien representatives spoke of alliances, trade, and peace. The Emperor listened with patience, his expression calm, but it was his daughter who drew all attention. Princess Lysera, 17 years old, sat at his side. She was young, but her beauty was famed among the noble houses, and her sharp tongue was feared even more. She had grown up in a palace where weakness was mocked and only strength was honored. Her eyes glittered with curiosity as she examined each delegation, but when her gaze landed on the humans, it did not hide her contempt. When the humans were called forward, their ambassador bowed and presented words of respect. He spoke of Earth's hope for cooperation, of unity despite difference. The court listened, though many exchanged smirks. Humans, to them, were fragile, with soft bodies and short lives. What could they offer the galaxy but persistence? It was then that Lysera leaned forward, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Is this all your people bring?" she asked, her words sharp and ringing against the crystal walls. "A few soldiers, an old man with polite words, and a boy who hides in the shadow of his elders?" Laughter rippled through the court. The alien nobles looked at Michael, whose cheeks warmed under the sudden attention. He had not expected to be addressed, much less mocked in front of hundreds. Lysera tilted her head, a cruel smile tugging her lips as she continued. 17 years, and I already see more than he ever will, she said, her tone dismissive. Does your race have no pride? No strength? Why send children to sit among rulers? Michael's hands tightened behind his back. Every instinct told him to defend himself, to prove he was not weak. But as he looked at the rows of mocking faces, he understood the trap. Any protest would fuel their laughter. Any argument would only deepen the mockery. His ambassador glanced at him with quiet warning, urging him to stay composed. Michael's heart pounded, but he remembered his training. Patience, discipline, silence when words were useless. So he bowed his head once, a small gesture of respect. Then, without speaking, he turned on his heel and walked away from the center of the hall. His boots echoed softly on the polished floor, the only sound in the sudden pause that followed. The laughter dimmed, replaced by a strange hush. None had expected silence. None had expected him to simply leave without a word. The princess blinked, her smirk fading for a heartbeat. To her, silence was unusual. In her world, insults were met with louder insults, strength with strength. Yet this human had refused to play the game. She laughed again, though less certain, waving a hand as if to dismiss the moment. He runs away, she said, but her voice did not carry the same weight as before. The court's amusement returned, though scattered and weaker. The humans quietly withdrew, their ambassador keeping his dignity. Michael walked with his head high, his silence heavier than any words he might have spoken. Behind him, whispers began to spread. Was it shame that kept him quiet or something else? Later, in the human quarters, Michael sat alone for a time. His thoughts replayed the moment over and over. He hated the sting of her words, the laughter of the court. but he reminded himself why he had kept his silence. His people were new here. To lash out would only prove their reputation of being impulsive and crude. By walking away, he had chosen dignity over anger, though it left him unsettled. Unseen by him, not all in the court had laughed. A few alien envoys, older and more observant, noted the humans' restraint. To them, silence spoke of control, and control was a kind of strength. Even Princess Lizera, restless in her chambers that night, found her mind circling back to the boy who had left without answer. She told herself it was nothing, yet part of her was curious why he had not defended himself. In her empire, silence was rare, and sometimes rare things carried more power than noise. The stage had been set. A single insult had passed, but in the silence that followed, the course of many futures had quietly begun to change. The human quarters were far smaller than the grand halls of the Zalari court. Their walls were plain metal instead of crystal, their furniture practical instead of jeweled. Yet within this simplicity there was an order and calmness that reflected the people who stayed there. Michael Reyes sat at a desk, his fingers moving quickly across a datapad as he organized reports, repaired minor glitches, and prepared the next day's schedule for his superiors. He worked in silence, his mind focused, though the sting of the princess's insult still echoed in his chest. Outside, the city around the palace gleamed with light and movement. Alien species from across the galaxy gathered in celebration, enjoying feasts, music, and festivals. The humans, however, did not join the noise. They remained in their modest quarters, checking equipment, running drills, and preparing for the tasks ahead. While the galaxy danced, they worked. Michael's superior, Ambassador Harlan, walked into the room and glanced at the young cadet. The older man had deep lines on his face carved from decades of service, but his eyes carried respect for the boy's composure. "You handled yourself well today," Harlan said quietly. "Many would have tried to argue, and it would have only made us look small." Michael paused, setting down the datapad. "It didn't feel like strength," he admitted. "It felt like running away." "Strength is not always in words," the ambassador replied. "Sometimes it is in choosing silence. The princess sought to humiliate us. You denied her the satisfaction." Michael nodded, though his thoughts remained unsettled. Silence might have been wise, but it left him with a weight he could not shake. As the night grew deeper, the human camp continued its routine. Soldiers trained in small groups, practicing with restraint, never boasting. Engineers adjusted machines with steady hands, fixing problems with simple tools instead of flashy alien technology. They were disciplined, united, and efficient. For all their lack of glamour, they carried themselves with quiet purpose. Unseen by them, Princess Lizera watched from a balcony above the courtyard. Curiosity had drawn her out of her chambers, even though she told herself it was nothing more than idle amusement. She had mocked the young human earlier, expecting him to sputter with anger or beg for dignity. Instead, he had turned and walked away, leaving her words hanging in the air. It puzzled her more than she wanted to admit. Her empire thrived on pride. In Zalari culture, insults were answered immediately, and no one allowed their honor to be questioned. She herself had grown sharp-tongued because that was how strength was shown, but this human had chosen something else. He had refused to play her game. Watching him now, calmly repairing equipment instead of sulking or boasting, made her feel an unfamiliar sensation. Doubt. Strange creatures, she whispered to herself. The following day brought more tasks. Delegations prepared for another round of council meetings, and the humans were expected to contribute reports on resource exchanges. Michael carried the weight of most of the preparation, checking figures, cross-verifying shipments, and making sure their data was flawless. Other aides from different species laughed and gossiped, flaunting their titles and wealth, but Michael kept his focus on the work. His silence again drew glances, but not all of them mocking. Some alien assistants, burdened by their own arrogant masters, found themselves respecting the human's steadiness. During a break, as Michael adjusted a faulty translation device, two alien envoys approached him. They were older, their skin marked with the patterns of their long-lived species. One of them nodded politely. "You are different from what we expected," the envoy said in careful English. "Your people are new, yet you do not complain of small rooms or fewer luxuries." Michael straightened, unsure how to respond. "We do what we can with what we have," he said. Comfort doesn't matter as much as readiness. The aliens exchanged a thoughtful look before walking away. Small words, but they left an impression. Lysera heard of this encounter later through the endless whispers that ran across the palace. She tried to dismiss it, yet her mind lingered. Her people valued luxury, power, and display. The humans seemed to value none of it, and somehow it made them harder to understand. That evening, another opportunity came to test them. A storm struck the city, wild energy waves shaking parts of the power grid. While many delegations panicked as lights flickered and systems failed, the humans acted quickly. Michael coordinated with engineers, setting up portable generators, securing supplies, and lending aid to nearby quarters that had lost power. He gave orders calmly, his voice steady, as if he had been trained for such emergencies his whole life. Lysera, watching from a distance, felt her chest tighten with confusion. This was the same boy she had mocked, yet here he was, commanding with quiet confidence while others twice his age stumbled in fear. She told herself it was nothing, just coincidence, but the thought followed her back to her chambers. Later she confronted her father, the Emperor, in private. "Why are these humans here?" she asked sharply.
"They are weak, yet they act as if they belong among us." The Emperor studied her with wise eyes.
"Do not judge them too quickly, Lysera. I have seen young races rise before. They burn bright when others think them small. Watch them, and you may learn something." She turned away, unwilling to admit that she already had begun to learn. Back in the human quarters, Michael sat once more at his desk, tired but focused. His hands were blistered from repairs, his uniform smudged with grease, but he carried no complaint. To him it was simply duty. What he did not know was that every silent act, every steady decision, was reshaping how others saw his people. Some nobles continued to laugh, dismissing humans as insignificant. But beneath the laughter, a few voices began to whisper. They spoke of the young human who did not answer insult with rage, who worked without demanding reward, who kept calm when storms shook the city. And in the palace tower, the princess who had mocked him most of all found herself restless, staring out the window at the quiet lights of the human camp. For the first time in her life, she wondered if perhaps strength did not always need to roar. The galaxy was watching, though few yet understood. A seed had been planted in silence, and in time it would grow into something far greater than anyone expected. The next morning dawned with an eerie calm over the Zalari capital. The crystal towers reflected sunlight like 1,000 mirrors, dazzling and bright, while the streets below remained busy with the orderly chaos of a civilization used to power and precision. Within the palace, the delegations were summoned to a grand ceremonial parade, a tradition of showing the Empire's strength and unity. Every species participated, displaying its military units, technology, and cultural pride. It was meant to impress, intimidate, and remind all present that the Zalari Empire's power was unquestionable. Michael Reyes and the human delegation prepared quietly in their quarters. Unlike the alien groups who polished weapons and adorned themselves in ceremonial attire, the humans focused on readiness and coordination. Michael reviewed maps, checked communications, and confirmed that all members of the delegation knew their routes and signals. He moved with a quiet efficiency that drew some stares from alien aides, who were used to loud orders and dramatic gestures. Princess Lysera, meanwhile, stood atop the balcony overlooking the main parade square. Her gown shimmered like liquid metal, and her hair caught the morning light, framing her sharp, youthful face. She had spent a restless night thinking about the human boy she had mocked. Curiosity and irritation warred inside her. How could someone so young, so unassuming, carry himself with such composure? The parade began with fanfare, music, and ceremonial displays. The Zalari soldiers marched in perfect unison, their armor gleaming, their movements precise. Alien dignitaries cheered and waved from the balconies. The humans moved as part of the delegation, their steps coordinated but quiet, almost understated. Michael's eyes scanned the square, observing the formations and noting weaknesses in timing and spacing. He made small, silent adjustments to his group, subtle enough that the aliens around them would not notice, but enough to ensure flawless movement. And then it happened. A sudden roar of energy shook the square. From the far end of the city, dark ships appeared, cutting through the morning sky. They were unregistered and armed with illegal plasma weapons. banned by interstellar treaties. Panic swept the parade. Zalari soldiers fired their weapons without coordination, some tripping over ceremonial banners while alien envoys screamed orders that were ignored in the chaos. Lysera froze. Her eyes widened as she saw the first blasts tear through the parade square, sending columns of light and debris into the air. The court guards tried to form a line, but they were outnumbered and unprepared. Noble spectators scattered, shrieking in fear, while courtiers and servants ran in all directions. In the midst of this chaos, Michael did not panic. He moved quickly, assessing the danger and making decisions instantly. "Everyone to the left exit. Stay low, keep moving," he called, his voice calm and firm, carrying over the din. The humans began organizing other delegates, guiding frightened beings toward safe areas. Michael ran between them, signaling with hand gestures, directing engineers to redirect failing power grids, and even dragging one smaller alien to safety. Princess Lysera, terrified, watched as the young human navigated the chaos. He was everywhere at once, not panicking, not freezing, not screaming. His orders were simple, clear, and effective. And yet he was only a boy. The realization struck her harder than any insult she had ever hurled. He was saving lives when others could not. The rogue attackers struck again, aiming plasma blasts at the palace itself. Michael quickly identified the most dangerous zones and moved to block incoming debris with portable shields. His human companions followed instinctively, lifting fallen objects, calming frightened delegates, and guiding them to safety. Each action was precise, each decision effective. While the Zalari soldiers scattered or argued over commands, the humans became the anchor in the storm. Lysera, unable to tear her eyes away, felt a mixture of fear and awe. The boy she had mocked, the one she expected to run or beg for dignity, was demonstrating a courage and control that no amount of wealth or royal training could teach. He moved with strategy, selflessness, and calm. His silence, she realized, was not ignorance or fear. It was focus, strength. The palace alarm blared, but it seemed no one truly understood what was happening except for a handful of individuals who were responding with skill and courage. Michael noticed that one of the grand doors to the inner palace was about to collapse under the energy blasts. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward it, rallying a group of humans and smaller aliens to brace the beams and hold it in place. Sparks flew, debris rained down, but he refused to retreat. Each time an object threatened to fall, he acted, lifting, shifting, and supporting. Nearby, Lysera felt a strange, uncomfortable sensation. Guilt. Her mocking words, meant to belittle, had assumed he was weak. Now she realized how wrong she had been. He was not weak. He was extraordinary. Every instinct she had been taught about superiority and strength seemed challenged by his actions. The rogue faction's attack grew more violent. They had underestimated the human delegation. Michael quickly organized a counter-strategy, instructing engineers to overload the perimeter shields in a controlled manner, creating safe zones for evacuation. He worked without hesitation, never faltering even as blasts rocked the palace walls. The humans acted as a unit, coordinated by his calm command. For the first time in her life, Princess Lysera felt fear not for herself, but for her people. She wanted to step down to help, but her inexperience made her hesitate. Then Michael did something remarkable. He noticed her position on the balcony. Without a word, he signaled to nearby aides to create a protective path toward the stairs. He did not speak directly to her. He did not offer reassurance. He simply acted, ensuring her safety. The princess's heart raced. The boy she had mocked. He did not boast, did not seek attention, did not even acknowledge her presence. He simply did what was right. She realized that this was the very essence of the human's strength. Action over words, calm over emotion, intelligence over pride. Hours passed like minutes. By midday, the rogue faction's attack began to falter. Their ships, caught in unexpected resistance, started to retreat. Damage was extensive, but the palace and most delegates survived. Casualties were lower than expected, thanks largely to the humans' intervention. The court slowly regained control. Alien soldiers finally regrouped, and the palace administration worked to assess damage. Yet the whispers were different now. Instead of ridicule, there were murmurs of admiration. Delegates spoke quietly of the human boy who had stood firm, guided others, and acted with courage when all else seemed lost. Even the emperor, though composed, noted the unusual effectiveness of the newcomers. Lysera remained on the balcony until the last of the chaos subsided. She could not deny what she had seen. The boy's calm under fire, his skill and his courage left her unsettled. She had mocked him once, expecting weakness, but he had shown something she had never encountered before. The quiet strength of a human willing to act without needing praise or recognition. Later, as the humans gathered back in their quarters, Michael finally allowed himself a moment of rest. His hands were bruised, his uniform smeared with soot, but he did not feel fear or regret. He had done what he could, and it had been enough. Around him, his companions quietly shared relief and gratitude. None spoke of heroics or fame. Their work had been its own reward, and far above, Princess Lysera returned to her chambers, her thoughts restless. She stared at the window, replaying the scene over and over. The young human's composure, skill, and bravery weighed heavily on her mind. She could not admit it aloud, but a seed of admiration and perhaps something more had begun to grow. The Zalari Empire had expected humans to be weak, naive, and irrelevant. Today that expectation had shattered. In the quiet aftermath of chaos, one simple truth had become clear. This human, whom she had mocked, was far stronger than anyone had anticipated, and the princess, for all her beauty, pride, and youth, would never forget it. The aftermath of the attack left the palace in a tense quiet. Broken banners hung limp along the walls, scorch marks marred the crystal columns, and debris littered the parade square. While the Zalari guards and engineers scrambled to restore order, Michael Reyes moved through the corridors with calm precision, checking on the injured and making sure the evacuation paths remained clear. His hands were bruised and dirtied from clearing rubble, and his uniform was stained with soot and blood, yet he did not stop. The humans had saved dozens of lives, yet there was no celebration among them. They moved as if the chaos had been routine, performing their duties with the same quiet focus as before. Michael guided a group of frightened aliens to a safe wing of the palace, speaking softly and reassuringly, even when some of them trembled with shock. To him, panic was a luxury that no one could afford. Survival required steadiness, and steadiness required calm. Princess Lysera observed from a high balcony, hidden in the shadows of the damaged tower. She could not forget what she had seen during the attack. The same young human she had mocked, the same boy she had expected to crumble under pressure, had led with intelligence and courage. She felt a mixture of awe and discomfort. Her pride, honed over 17 years, had taught her that no human could match her people. Yet here he was, proving her beliefs wrong. She moved closer to the edge of the balcony and watched as Michael approached a group of engineers struggling with a damaged energy conduit. Sparks flew from broken panels and a low hum of danger resonated through the corridor. Without hesitation, he knelt, assessing the damage, instructing others where to connect wires and reroute power. Each movement was careful, precise, and effective. One engineer, a smaller alien with thin limbs, struggled to lift a heavy panel. Michael bent down, helping her without a word, adjusting the conduit so that the connection would hold. The engineer looked at him, wide-eyed, and whispered a word of thanks. Lysera's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her. She had mocked him publicly, yet he had done nothing to retaliate. No insult, no boast, no argument. He had acted, saving lives, giving instructions, and carrying responsibility that even seasoned Zalari officers had struggled with. She realized that her laughter, her pride, and her superiority had meant nothing compared to his actions. The corridor ahead groaned as part of the ceiling threatened to collapse. Michael spotted it immediately. Without hesitation, he shouted for everyone to move back while he, along with 2 engineers, held up a damaged support beam long enough to allow others to escape. The metal groaned under the pressure, sweat dripping from his brow, yet he did not flinch. Finally, the beam settled, the engineers pulled it into place, and the corridor was stabilized. A shout came from the central hall. One of the nobles had been trapped under falling debris. Michael ran, sliding under a shattered archway, and lifted the heavy stone slab with surprising strength, freeing the noble. The man stumbled back, terrified but unharmed, bowing repeatedly in gratitude. Michael only nodded once and turned away, already moving toward the next problem. Princess Lysera could not look away. She had never seen such selflessness in her empire, and yet it was the very essence of humanity in her eyes. Her admiration conflicted with her pride. She had expected him to be weak, insignificant, and easily intimidated. She had mocked him publicly, assuming his silence was fear. But now she understood. His silence was not weakness. It was a deliberate choice. Strength did not always need to shout. Sometimes it acted quietly, with purpose, and without expectation of recognition. As the day progressed, the palace slowly regained order. The human delegation worked tirelessly, checking on wounded aliens, restoring power, and repairing broken equipment. Michael guided them with calm authority, his voice steady, his decisions clear. Even the palace guards, who had initially viewed the humans with disdain, began to follow his instructions. They realized that his calmness and efficiency had prevented greater loss. Lizera, still watching, finally decided to descend to the ground floor. She wanted to see him closer, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. When she reached the corridor where he was assisting injured aliens, she froze. Michael had noticed a young Zalari child trapped under a heavy beam. He lifted it carefully, helping the child to safety, and guided the child's family to a secure area. Not once did he look around for praise or acknowledgement. He did what was necessary simply because it was the right thing to do. Lizera stepped closer. You are remarkable," she said softly, almost unsure if she wanted him to hear. Michael did not look at her, focused entirely on the task at hand. She repeated herself louder this time. "You are remarkable." He paused briefly, then nodded once, his attention returning immediately to organizing the humans and assisting the injured. His calmness, his dedication, his refusal to be distracted even by her words, it left her speechless. Later, when the immediate danger had passed, Michael found a moment to sit down. His hands were scratched, bruised, and bleeding lightly, but he was not tired in spirit. Around him, humans cleaned equipment, checked supplies, and quietly discussed next steps. None spoke of heroics or fame. They treated their survival and their work as ordinary duty. Princess Lizera watched from a distance. She had not moved from that corridor since she had first spoken to him. She realized that what she had called mocking was a test of character. In Zalari culture, strength was shown through words and presence. In humans, she was learning. Strength was shown through action, responsibility, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. She thought back to the first day she had mocked him in the court. Her words had been sharp, meant to belittle. Yet he had never responded with anger, embarrassment, or fear. Instead, he had acted quietly, proving a type of strength she had never seen before. Her own laughter, her own pride now felt hollow in comparison. That evening, the Emperor called a council meeting to assess the damage and discuss the attack. The human delegation was present, as always. When Michael entered the room, some of the older Zalari envoys whispered among themselves, nodding in approval. His calm presence was commanding, even without authority or rank. Lizera followed him in, her eyes locked on him. For the first time, she felt a strange combination of respect and humility. She could no longer dismiss him as weak, and the mockery she had once felt justified now seemed foolish. She realized that humans were different, not weaker but strong in ways her people had never considered. As the meeting began, the Emperor spoke. He acknowledged the humans' efforts during the attack, praising their calmness, organization, and courage. Many Zalari nodded, still surprised at how the young cadet had influenced the survival of so many. Michael accepted the recognition silently, nodding slightly, but he did not seek it. His actions were enough. After the council, Lizera approached him quietly, away from the eyes of others. I owe you an apology," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I mocked you when I should have observed. I thought your silence was weakness, but now I see. It was your strength." Michael looked at her, his expression calm. He said nothing, only nodded in acknowledgement. His silence once again spoke volumes. It conveyed dignity, restraint, and quiet confidence. Lizera felt a strange warmth in her chest, the kind that came from admiration and understanding. For the first time, she truly saw a human, not as weak or primitive, but as strong, capable, and honorable. She realized that the boy she had mocked, the human she had dismissed, had shown her a lesson she could never learn from books or royal training. The night settled over the palace. Cracks of lightning from the storm earlier had faded, and the city lights glimmered peacefully. Inside, humans continued their work quietly, fixing, aiding, and preparing. Michael's hands were sore, but his mind remained clear, focused on duty and purpose. And high in her chambers, Princess Lysera gazed out the window once more. She could not stop thinking about him. The boy who had walked away in silence from her insult had become the center of her attention, not through words but through action. She realized that perhaps, in the galaxy's vast expanse, humans were not to be underestimated. They carried a strength that did not scream but endured and acted when it mattered most. The seed of respect had grown, and soon it would bloom into something far more powerful, recognition of the human's potential. The princess understood it now, though she could not yet fully explain it. The human boy had proven, without a word, that strength was not always visible. And Michael, unaware of the change he had sparked in the young princess, continued his work, focused on helping, guiding, and acting with quiet courage. His silence, once mocked, had spoken louder than any words ever could. The palace was quiet the next morning, but the damage from the attack still lingered. Broken pillars leaned at odd angles, scorch marks decorated the walls, and the streets outside were lined with rubble. The Zalari Empire, known for its perfection and order, had been humbled, if only slightly, by the unexpected assault. Delegates gathered again in the Grand Hall, their faces marked by fatigue, shock, and curiosity. Whispers of the human boy who had stood firm traveled quickly through the court. Michael Reyes moved through the hall quietly, checking that his companions were accounted for, and that injured delegates had proper care. His uniform was still dirty and torn, his hands marked by burns and bruises, but his expression was calm and composed. Despite the chaos of the previous day, he had focused entirely on saving lives rather than seeking praise or glory. That quiet courage had already begun to shift opinions. Princess Lysera entered the hall behind him, her steps hesitant. She had spent the night reflecting on her actions, her words, and her pride. The sting of her own mockery had faded, replaced by a deeper respect for the young human who had acted without fear or need of recognition. Every time she remembered him lifting fallen beams, guiding frightened envoys, and coordinating the humans and aliens alike, her chest tightened with admiration. The Emperor rose to address the court. His voice was calm, steady, and commanding, cutting through the murmurs. Yesterday, our empire faced a test it did not anticipate. Many showed courage and resolve, but one group, a delegation from Earth, distinguished themselves. They acted with composure, strategy, and bravery beyond their years. Among them, a young aide, Michael Reyes, demonstrated exceptional leadership and courage. A hush fell over the hall. Delegates and nobles exchanged surprised glances. Michael, who had anticipated nothing of this nature, simply stood silently, his hands clasped in front of him. He did not bow excessively. He did not raise his eyes for acknowledgement. His calm composure remained unchanged even in the face of praise. Lysera, unable to contain herself any longer, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice clear and steady, though it carried a weight of personal admission. I owe an apology. I mocked him when I should have watched, laughed when I should have learned. I thought his silence meant weakness, but it was strength." Michael Reyes showed courage, clarity, and honor that even our trained warriors could not match. Michael turned to face her briefly. He gave a slight nod, acknowledging her words without pride or arrogance. His silence spoke more than words ever could. It conveyed humility, dignity, and quiet confidence. Lysera felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of respect and something she could not yet name. She realized that this young human, whom she had dismissed, had taught her a lesson about true strength. The court erupted in whispers once more, but this time it was admiration, not mockery. Delegates from other species looked at Michael with newfound respect. Some even stepped forward to bow, acknowledging his bravery. Michael returned their gestures politely but quietly. He did not seek recognition. He had done what he needed to do, and that had been enough. Later in the private chambers, Lysera approached Michael once more. She had spent hours replaying every moment of the attack in her mind. "I want you to know," she said softly, "your courage. It changed how I see your people. I judged humans too quickly. You have shown me that strength is not always about power or status, it is about choice, action, and heart." Michael gave a small, polite nod. "Thank you, Princess," he said quietly. "That means a lot, but I only did what I could to help." Lysera studied him for a long moment. "You do not brag. You do not demand recognition. Yet everyone in this court remembers your actions. That is remarkable." Michael smiled faintly. "Sometimes actions are more important than words." She laughed softly, a sound of relief and understanding. "I see that now, and I will not forget it." As days passed, the human delegation remained in the Zalari Palace. The court slowly returned to normal routines, though the memory of the attack lingered in everyone's mind. Delegates and soldiers spoke often of the humans' calm coordination, their bravery, and Michael's leadership. Even those who had once mocked the humans found themselves re-evaluating their assumptions. Lysera spent much of her time observing Michael and his companions. She saw how they worked together, how they assisted one another without pride or competition, how they adapted to challenges with quiet focus. It became clear to her that humans were different in ways that her empire had underestimated. They were resilient, disciplined, and capable of extraordinary courage, all without demanding praise. One evening, Lysera found herself walking beside Michael in the palace gardens. The air was cool, filled with the scent of alien blossoms that shimmered under the artificial lights. She did not speak at first, letting him move in silence beside her. Finally, she said, "I used to think your people were weak. I mocked you, thinking it would be easy. But now I understand. You are strong in ways my people rarely are. You act without arrogance, you lead without title, and you never ask for glory. That is rare." Michael glanced at her, a faint smile on his face. "We try to do what is right. That is all anyone can do." Lysera nodded slowly. "You have taught me something important. My pride blinded me. I thought strength meant showing off, proving superiority, or dominating others. But I see now that true strength is often quiet. It is steady. It is action without expectation." He did not respond with words. Instead, he continued walking beside her, letting silence carry the understanding between them. The following weeks brought more council meetings, trade discussions, and negotiations. Michael and the human delegation continued their work with diligence, but their presence had changed the perception of humans across the court. What had begun as mockery slowly turned into respect and, in some whispers, awe. The Empire began to see that humans, though young as a spacefaring civilization, were capable of surprising feats, resilience, and leadership. Lysera found herself frequently reflecting on the events of that day. She realized that the boy she had mocked had not only saved lives, but had also challenged the assumptions of an entire empire. And she, as a princess, had witnessed firsthand the quiet courage that defined humans. Her respect deepened into admiration, and a seed of curiosity grew. How far could these humans go? One afternoon, the Emperor summoned Michael privately. "You have done your people proud," he said, his voice carrying both authority and warmth. "Your actions during the attack proved that humans are not to be underestimated. You showed courage, intelligence, and leadership far beyond your years. You have my respect and that of this court." Michael bowed politely. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I could," the Emperor nodded. "And that was enough. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in humility, discipline, and action, not words." As Michael left the audience chamber, Lysera watched him from a balcony above. Her thoughts were filled with admiration, respect, and a strange, unspoken recognition of his character. She realized that humans once dismissed had proven themselves through courage and steadfastness. The boy she had mocked in court had become a symbol of hope, discipline, and strength, not only for humans but for all who had witnessed his deeds. In the palace gardens that evening, Michael walked silently, reflecting on the events. He had done nothing extraordinary in his own mind. He had acted as he believed was right, yet his actions had sparked respect, reshaped perceptions, and reminded an empire that strength came in many forms. Lysera approached him once more, carrying a small gift from her personal quarters, a symbol of respect from the princess to the human who had taught her a lesson. She handed it to him, her hand steady. "For your courage," she said simply. "For showing me that strength can be quiet and steadfast." "Thank you." Michael accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you, Princess," he replied. "I am honored." The palace lights shimmered in the alien night, reflecting off crystal towers and gardens alike. Around them, whispers of humans' bravery spread, shaping the perception of an entire species. Michael had remained silent, dignified and humble, yet his actions had spoken louder than any words ever could. Lysera turned to him one last time. "I will not forget this," she said softly. "You have shown me what true strength is." Michael smiled faintly, his calm eyes reflecting understanding. "Then it is enough," he said. As the humans continued their work and the palace slowly rebuilt from the attack, one truth remained clear. Humans, once mocked and dismissed, had proven their place among the stars, and the galaxy had begun to notice. The 17-year-old princess had learned a lesson she would carry for life. Strength was not always measured in words, titles, or weapons. It was measured in actions, courage, and quiet dignity. And Michael Reyes, the young human she had mocked, had embodied that truth completely. For the first time, the Zalari Empire, and its princess, understood that humans were not just survivors. They were capable of greatness. And so, the boy who had walked away in silence, the one who had faced mockery without complaint, had won far more than respect. He had earned recognition, admiration, and a place in the hearts of those who had doubted him. A single human, acting with courage and quiet strength, had begun to change the galaxy's view of his entire species.